Recording in progress.
How's everyone doing?
Good, but kind of losing my voice. So
Having fun doing other things.
I think I'm getting sick.
Oof.
Less fun.
Yeah.
Hi there, guys.
Hi.
Hey there. Hey, where do you blur a background in settings on your phone? Does anybody remember?
On the phone,
On my phone.
let's see. Well, I don't remember on the phone, but you might just swipe if you don't see anything. But the three dots on the computer is where you choose to blur your background.
Okay, the three dots is more background and effects. Cool. Blur.
Oh no, not heat stroke. Glad everyone's okay.
Video filters. Blur,
Yeah,
fine, I'll take it.
Not the time to have AC go out if everyone's been experiencing this heat wave.
Yeah.
Or is this
My friend
finally
lives
going
my friend
away?
lives in Houston where the hurricane hit, so everyone was without AC and it's like 100 degrees. She's like, I can't even sleep. And I was like, yeah, that's terrible.
Our heat wave is just starting to subside in the Bay Area, so I've been
Ours went down for like a day and then went back up and then went down for like it's like one day a week that we get like a high of 80, which is nice. And then it goes back up.
I've been parked outside my friend's place, just like they call me their roommate now because I'm in the house all the time because they have AC.
My car has no AC, so that's not a fun experience.
Yeah, my vehicle AC went out a couple of months ago. I haven't fixed it yet. Cool. I think this might be everyone. Does anyone have video that they are submitting?
But it is uploading with my slow internet connection, so I might need a few minutes.
Okay, for sure. Well, you might be the only one, Anne, unless anyone else has video.
It's been a minute since I've been here and I missed it, so I'm back.
All right. All righty. Well, we can just kind of continue to chat until Anne's video works out. But
yeah, sorry, I was hoping to get it sooner, and it's just like not going up there.
No worries. So. I mean, I haven't been uploading videos in a while myself. We're just at such a stage of training where like every session there's something like new to explore, or like we've gotten the hurdles are sometimes smaller because it's just like we just have to kind of keep putting on skills. And so our one video from like a week later is no longer applicable type of thing. So I would just at this like constant rate of change, which is nice. I love it. I feel like when I get to a point with a dog where we're like, okay, now what's next? I start to feel a little stale. but you always need to keep, you know. I'd love to hear more about your experience at the Canine Incentive thing, Heather.
Yeah, that would be great while this is uploading. It's almost there, 95%.
Yeah, happy to talk about it. So they offer, I think this is like the third year now that Canine Census and like the Canine Detection Collaborative podcast people come together to do a week-long seminar. And so they call it Distraction Camp. Level 1 is mainly focused on like dogs being able to just even interact and engage with the handler around said distractions that a farm brings. So that was more of what I think Ellie's level was, I thought in my head, but I was like, I want to be able to bring both. And so we signed up for level 2, and that component or that idea, they kind of, I don't know what they did for Distraction Camp 2 last year, but this year they kind of wanted to, I think partly because there was only 5 of us. It's a much smaller class than I think there's 14 going to be at round 1. So they have to stick to a much stricter like plan to get everything done. And so this was more handler focused. So like based off of what they observe that you guys need or your goals for the week, they were kind of tailoring the schedule or whatever. And it seemed like a lot of people's goals were like intentionally handling your dog and to help them with like different odor puzzles, which was definitely something that I kind of got lax in training. Because like once you're on a project, especially like the ones that we've gone on wind farms, especially like you aren't really doing a lot of training when you're in the field because it's just like 4 to 5 days of work and then you relax. So then you save that for winter off season stuff. And so I guess all that to say, I didn't really focus on anything more complex sort of odor problems with Scotty aside from, I mean, we were in the Midwest last season, and so it was a lot flatter. And now in our project in Wyoming, we've got some like more vegetation and hills and things like that that impacted. And I was really surprised. Actually, he naturally would just like go search the gullies, and I was like, "Oh, cool! You know that that's different." But I didn't intentionally do that stuff with him. So this past week was like a lot of like the first 2 days we ran blind searches, and then they ended up doing like half of them were blank, and then the end of the other half of the day they flip-flopped. So like the areas that had blanks, they then put our odors in. And so that was like interesting to see how your dog, you know, cleared a blank area and then how much faster they could do it when there's the odor present. And I was just, I don't know, like, not that I have low expectations of Ellie, but like she cleared a whole blank like barn with tons of tractors and like farm equipment that apparently one dog had trouble with because there was a ton of critter odor, and she was like in it the whole time with me. So that was like a proud mom moment. And then yeah, it was just a lot of being uncomfortable with not because I'm used to doing like blind searches because essentially everything we do operationally is blind. But um but yeah, just getting uncomfortable with not knowing all of the answers. And like a few times they're like, "Oh, did you see your dog's nose hook or whatever?" And it's like, no, I did not see that. Like there was so much other stuff that I was looking at. So like being a student and being okay with like not, yeah, feeling like I knew all of the answers. And it took a day or so. And also like no shade, like last seminar I went to at this was with Robin, who is the main lady at Canine Census, and then she had Crystal there, who's also on the podcast with her, and she's just like so positive, and like her whole thing is play. So that was what we focused on a lot last time around. I don't know. And so then this was my first time meeting Stacy, and she comes from the nose work world and is also a, I think, ex-chemical engineer or something. So she knows like all of the odor dynamic stuff, which is super helpful for nosework people, especially when you're working inside buildings and knowing how the thermals and the windows and all of that will impact. Not to say that doesn't impact us as much on a larger scale, but like it's more important for some aspects. So anyway, I think I just wasn't, I don't know. I think the vibe of the group also plays a role too, because I mentioned it during the last call we were on talking about the Conservation Dog Alliance. But like last seminar, it was a bunch of search and rescue and human remains detection handlers, and this one I was the only conservation person, and all the rest were nose work. So it's just like I would try, like someone had asked me about my experience doing what I do, and then I just like saw the eyes wandering as I was talking, like they didn't actually care what I was talking about. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but I don't know. Yeah. But then also just getting used to different instructors' training styles, because I kind of took Stacy's way of critiquing more to heart, but you just kind of have to like realize that people are all different and not take it so personally and stuff. But yeah, just that was my week. um yeah, I could elaborate on more if you have specifics, but
I would love to have more like in situ feedback on me reading my dog, because that that's a hard one to get, I feel like, because not everyone's gonna like, you don't have a lot of people out in the field with you. And more of like if you're training in a controlled environment that you have feedback. And I've been getting a lot of that the last couple of months, which I've like really, really valued. But yeah, there's just not a whole lot of substitute for like someone following you behind in a very realistic environment to how you deploy. So that's really cool.
yeah, and I think that was kind of what everyone was realizing in the seminar too. Like and they were like, we are, not that I know the nose work equivalent, but they were like, these are summit level hides that we're doing. Like these are already challenging. And so we're testing you as well as your dog. Like it's going to be tough. So just like, yeah, having that. So like not taking anything personally, or like they're like, we could set easy stuff to make you and your dog look good, but you're not paying for that. Like you want the instruction to make you better. So I think once I had that mind shift, I got more out of it. Yeah.
There's so much to be learned out of failures, is what I'm finding out. Like with our dogs, but like with us too, is it's just like an opportunity to learn. And it sounds like such a tagline for a while, where you're just like, oh, it's just an opportunity to learn. And then when you experience more of that, it's like watching your dog fail this puzzle that you set up, but then they run it again and they get it. It's like you just learned something there. Whereas like if I had held your hand through it, you would learn to rely on me. You wouldn't learn to figure that out yourself.
Yeah, and I think it was good to have instructors there for the first time teaching new skills, because I kind of failed by giving them just my whole container of training aids and not realizing that some of them are years old, and that I probably should have tested how much odor was actually coming off of them, because when it's I had used just a piece of a bat wing that was in a tin with only 4 holes, and then they put it under something. And then Scotty was like, he like would catch it up the wall, which we were trying to teach him, like getting it up and then sourcing down. But like he was on, like he did 15 minutes of active sniffing and like solved the problem. But like we probably could have, yeah, subverted that or made it a little more
Right.
easy. But
Right.
having people there to like I've noticed since being on this current project, we have to be on leash. And so I've gotten a little bit more vocal with him. And so he's relied on me a lot more, and I don't want him to be handler dependent. So that was something I was letting them know about. But then when you're learning a new skill, especially, like I am going to step in more to be like, hey, let's make sure we check this area, or just like it's a fine line of like helping them to learn the thing so that down the line they can problem solve better for themselves. But it's okay
Right.
to step in and help at the beginning for a new thing and then loosen the reins. So it was
For
good to have that
sure.
feedback.
Yeah, learning that like uh, your dog training needs to be dynamic, and that like what works really well for one stage of training is like a really bad thing to do at another stage of training potentially. Like there's again with the whole like one size doesn't fit all. Like not only does one size not fit all for every dog, but it's like for each dog that solution at a different stage of training might not actually be a solution. It might actually be like regressing your training. So like knowing when to progress, and then that's the kind of stuff that like I'm learning actively, but like could use so much more additional feedback on like, okay, this is something that you don't need to keep doing this now. And moving past stuff. It's hard because sometimes you like hold on to something that when it's like working, right? And you just want to keep doing that.
I had actually, you had asked the question in the group about indirect versus direct rewards, like close to when I was there. And I had noted in real time because the instructors would also work their dogs. So you can see them working their dogs. And for one rep, she did direct reward. And then for another one, she did indirect. So I was like, what, how do you decide what you do and when and stuff? And so we kind of talked about it at lunch, and she was like, well, when I'm wanting to work on like Flash's duration, because she's been like struggling to hold her alert because we had been doing a lot of reps of just like quick like not holding it. Like she wanted to I don't know what they were working on, but whatever. She wasn't making them hold the alert. And so like used that example of like, okay, I want to work on duration. So we're gonna let the reward appear out of, you know, thin air, and that's direct.
Yeah.
But also being able to, yeah, utilize both is a good thing. I think that's what the group ultimately kind of landed on too. But yeah,
Yeah.
circling to that.
Cool. Yeah. I for anyone that wasn't a part of the like student chat, I had posed a question of like, I started my dog on, well, so I started my new dog on indirect reward. So I was marking the behavior and then rewarding at me, and it was creating too much like look back. So we started doing direct rewards and actually went back to like, okay, let's imprint him on this odor with reward at source, which some people disagree with. I mean, for a while I didn't use that, but after using it, I like really love it to maybe start a dog, and then you get away from that and you don't go back to it because you don't want them to you want them to know that the reward comes from completing the behavior. They don't just get to self reward. But like to start it that way, again, going back to like something that's a solution at one stage of training is maybe a really bad thing to do at another stage of training. But yeah, like we started that way where so we switched to reward at source and then reward with the ball gods, where it's just the reward just rains down from above and they're just like, oh my God. And that's what we're still currently doing. But like eventually that's not going to be a super, oh hey Megan. Eventually that's not going to be a super like helpful thing to do, especially if we're like rewarding on a cliffside or something like that. Like that direct reward at source is just like really not going to work, especially because my lab basically plays basketball with his ball. Like he whacks it with his mouth and chases after it and just makes it this like whole big reward sequence for himself. I'm like, you go buddy, you have fun with that ball. But like that's not something we can be doing in certain behavior or certain search environments. So yeah, so that was my question that I had posed in the group chat, and that's what Heather was elaborating on. So eventually I'll want to go back to marking the behavior and rewarding at source, and then maybe sometimes working in the direct reward at source here and there. But it just created like such a commitment to the indication that I really love it. But well, it's just not practical in all circumstances. And how's your video doing?
I think they are both up.
Cool.
I posted in the Patreon, or I could try to share, whichever is easier.
If your internet's good, then if you just have it already, let's do that maybe.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done this on my own before. There we go. Okay, so I guess, so this one's Sophie. So I had the same setup, Sophie and Zuzu. As you can tell, it's super hot and dry here from the status of the vegetation. It's like 95 Fahrenheit and humid, and I've been kind of struggling to like get outside to do searches. And so like in between the last call and this one, I had done some searches on our deck, and Megan saw these videos with the Get Sent tubes, and I had put them like kind of in the middle of the deck, and we thought maybe there was some issues with the odor availability, because I had put them like in a crack on the deck to sort of hide them, that maybe the odor was not available and like maybe drifting underneath, because both dogs kind of struggled with it. But then I wound up changing that and then just kind of putting it on the flat part of the board. And we noticed like the dog was like searching every leaf, every pine cone, both my dogs, every pine cone, every twig, every object. Zuzu even like searched the hummingbird feeder that was hanging off there, and like neither of them searched just like open space without some kind of object to draw them to. And I think we were talking in this group too about like hide placement too and how that affects things. That, you know, a lot of my training has been with the sport dog training, and they hide a lot of things on like chairs and under tables and stuff like that. And so both of my dogs are consistently searching objects, but just not necessarily searching the area. So I was trying to set up a hide where they could search the area. So really in the middle of this lawn, there's a tin with a essential oil, birch anise clove combo. So it was like, I'm gonna do a cocktail with everything, you know, like the most possible chance for them to find it. Neither of them found it. I'm not sure. I think you were just saying like about checking how fresh your odor is. I don't remember when I made this tin up. It's just been in like a Mylar bag made up. So, you know, neither of them found it. They were both pretty close, that I thought like if it had some odor, they would have. But I wanted to share these videos because I kind of wound up having two different questions with each dog. This is Sophie's. I'm sorry, I talk so much, but so this is Sophie's. And my question with her is when she doesn't find it, kind of like what to do in terms of reward, no reward. She does seem to be searching, and then at some point, she kind of seemed to give up. And I think my guess is that, you know, I did her first, so I wasn't sure if odor was available or not. But I'm guessing, since Zuzu also didn't find it, that there probably just wasn't odor there. But then I kind of was like, I don't know what to do. You know, I'm going to call it. Like, you've been over this area, it's super hot. I'm going to call it. But I was curious, like, yeah, how to end it when I'm not like giving her a party for finding something. I wound up kind of telling her good girl, going inside, and then like rewarding her for like going through and passing Zuzu calmly and like getting in the house. But I could play this and kind of see what you all think on that.
Do you know roughly where the hide was?
Yeah, can you see my mouse? It's like kind of right in here behind it's not in that clump, but like a clump behind it.
Is it all
On
the way in the
Zuzu's
back?
video, I think I point to it. I'm like, it's right here for the camera when her back is turned.
Is it all the way under the clump or just on top, Anne?
It's like here, it's like under a few blades of grass, but it's not that covered.
Okay.
There's just some blades of grass over it. Kind of like behind where she's at, so like here. Oh, and the other feedback I was wondering is like on how I dealt with moving through the space where I know where it is and she's just not getting it. Yeah, I'm looking at it. She just kind of walked over it.
Wonder, Anne, did you click optimize for video when you started your screen share?
I don't know. Is it bad?
It's a little choppy for me. I don't know if it is for anyone else. I can follow kind of what's happening, but
Okay, let
maybe
me just pause it and I'll try again.
yeah, you're our only video review as of from what I know. So let's
Oh, here we
you
go.
take your time on
Optimize
it.
view. There we go. I missed it.
No, okay, great. Awesome.
So, I mean, there wasn't a lot here. I get back up just a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah, I think it's a little better.
That bag that she's near there is my wind indicator.
Nice.
And how long did you leave it out for before you searched it?
Oh, it was about 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't my plan. I was going to do it last night, and my next door neighbor brought a new foster dog home right on the other side of that fence, right as I was going to go out and search. And I thought that wouldn't be fair to ask them to do that. So it did sit out for quite some time.
So one reason it may not have been presenting is that because essential oils are super duper volatile and it was super hot, much of the odor may have dissipated by then. Even
Yeah.
if it was fresh, you probably find that there was pretty much nothing left after 24 hours. Like the target itself, if she had gotten on, would definitely still have something, but it wouldn't necessarily be what she's used to potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's an awesome point, Megan.
So probably if that happens again, just give up on that and switch it out for something else there, like fresh.
Yeah. Especially when it's hot. Like if it was really cold, it might like pool in there and be a bit different, but they're so volatile. Even I don't know, like my dogs will find it if we're doing a systematic, like in the car. I've like accidentally left out overnight oils, but like I've noticed it's a lot harder. And in the heat, it goes away really quickly.
Okay.
And you were talking about like what to do at the end. If it's like, I would kind of treat it like a blank search. You know, it's like, it is what it is. You did your search. I have an end of search protocol. So regardless if it's a blank or, you know, if they found 3 hides out of 4 or they found all of them, we have an end of search routine. So we just do a scatter of food on the ground and I say that'll do. So that's just my cue for us being done. We do it regardless of how the search went.
Okay. So when the search is done, you just give that cue and do a scatter and
Yeah, because then we don't end up doing some negative punishment accidentally of like
yeah.
the search becomes so rewarding for the dogs and they want to keep doing it. And then we're telling them the search is over. You don't get to search anymore. You don't have an opportunity to earn your rewards anymore. So to avoid accidentally negatively punishing, I end with reward.
Okay.
That's helpful. Thank you. I also start with a similar routine. So like my Bruce, he really needs to be like ready to rock in order to search. So I started him on like a bark command. And so when I pull back his collar, he starts barking and then I tell him to find it and he's like, it geeks him up a little bit and then he's like ready to go. Onyx doesn't need that so much and I wouldn't be training a bark command on him, but I just tell him to sit and then I have like a hand and sound that I do and that's his cue along with my like this sit before and then me going like and I go like this and then I give him my cue, so that's his before sequence. So they both have a before sequence. It varies based off my dogs, and then they have an after sequence, which is the same for each one of them. It's just the food scatter.
Okay. Okay. No, that sounds good. Yeah, this is right here. This is kind of what I wound up doing. She looked at me like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I just said done, which is kind of our NQ and petter.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
We walked in and then I rewarded her for something else, like for
Yeah. I mean, I think you have your done. That's great. And then you petting her if that's like a reward for her, then that can be supplemental for that just fine. I pet my dog so much that like I usually when I'm delivering food from my hand, there's like a purpose for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, that sounds good. And I like the idea of getting some kind of um reward in addition to the in addition to rewarding at source, which is what I usually do, of like some kind of like, hey, we're done. Here's a scatter or a reward like that I do
Yeah.
every time. I like that
Yeah.
too. I could do both, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I always reward for a find as well.
Yeah, but then kind of have a sort of a different way of rewarding for the end.
Yeah, they only get there, that'll do, when we're ending a session. And I don't do a whole lot of scatters when we're not ending a session either. Just like now that we don't use food for like every day of training, they mostly just get their food now. Because I've built up the behaviors that I need to be training food with. So it's mostly just like, scatter is really just associated with end of training for the most part.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Like something that's specific for the end of training.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like it depends on the dog. Like, I just give Evie a bowl and let her carry it, so it's not a different thing, but that's what she wants, and but it's still paired with that end of session cue, and we go and we're done, and there's no more ceremony after that. So as long as there's clarity about the situation, I think you can pick whatever works for Sophie or Zuzu.
Yeah. So Evie likes to carry her bowl around for her end of session.
Oh, her bowl. I just give it to her. Like, and instead of playing, I just give it to her and she carries it.
Oh, her ball. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I heard bowl, like a bowl.
I also
of food.
heard bowl.
I heard
And
bowl
To be
too.
fair, I probably could just give Evie literally anything to carry and she would be happy.
Yes. I'm absolutely loving that like lab desire to just carry everything around. Like the other day I put out a shirt that I was gonna put on and Onyx picked it up and was like, look, I have it for you. I'm like, you did, buddy. You did do it. Good job.
It's so good. I started calling Merlin Dobby because like he's always got socks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's great. All right. So this one's Zuzu's.
Yeah, so this one's Zuzu's and she's made an appearance here. And my question here really, and this might be again, because there wasn't really odor for her to find. But I felt that she searched a lot of the edges of the yard. And she moved through the center, but it really didn't seem to me like she had searched the center. And so it kind of made me think about she's a lot more resilient. I was more worried with Sophie about like not finding something in the reward. Zuzu's a little more resilient. I'm going to do the same for both. I don't want to take advantage of that. But for her, I was more thinking, how to teach her to search areas maybe that don't have odor. Or at least to make sure I cover the search area. Because it seemed like she was walking through the center, and again, probably because there wasn't anything there, but I kind of was like thinking there might be something there, so wanting her to check kind of everything that was available before moving on. So I'll play this and see, but that was kind of like one of my questions for her, I think, was whether, I guess you agreed, where if it does seem like she's only searching the edges, and then if so, how to kind of encourage her to search the whole area, even if she's not finding odor immediately. Oh. Sorry.
I was inclined to agree with you that she was searching a lot of the edges, but then she does start to utilize a little bit of the interior space.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she needs to search the edges first. Maybe that's her opinion on how a search should go. But if you do feel like she's doing too much of edge searching and not like maybe you want her to get a little more systematic of like, let's clear this area first. It's possible that we just like put too many hides near places where there's spots to detail. And like it's just like less interesting to search something that's like there's just less like little nooks and crannies, and that might just be a little bit less exciting. So doing some searches, like doing quite a few searches where she's only having hides that are put out in more like flat areas, like if you went to a field or if you only had hides that were found in the grass for a couple of sessions, and then she's like, oh, I have to search these areas too, then go about it by like, okay, let's clear this area first, and then maybe you start to put them more in like varied locations. So layering in some of the edge stuff, but still having a few in the center spot, with the more interior space, and then just layering in that and having it be where she runs into it right away is something where I would probably do, where it's like, because at first she's going to avoid that interior space. So like having it be an interior spot where it's like almost right after you cue the search, so that she's got to encounter it, and then she's like, oh wait, you can get it here too, and then it kind of clicks in her brain, to start searching those interior spaces.
I couldn't tell if you wanted to rewind a little bit. It looked like towards the end she might have barely caught something. Her body language definitely changed for a second. I didn't want to interrupt, but you might want to rewind it back a little bit before the end.
Let me see if I can share again.
She was like running through the center and searched, and if you were looking at the screen, you said the odor was in the back left. She kind of hit back center, but she focused on that area, and her tail carriage changed a lot, and she fixated there. A little bit before this, I think.
Before this, okay.
Right here.
Yeah, it was kind of like behind her then, but I agree. It seemed
But
like
she comes back right there too.
Yeah.
But if the source has been out that long, like who knows where the highest concentration of odor is at that point, right?
Yeah. So that's my bad for.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
That
I think
wasn't super clear either way, too.
Well, I think I'm agreeing with what Sarah's saying, is like that looked like a nose hook. Like that looked like she found something. And then she got there and she was just kind of like, it's not familiar. Not really what I was looking for.
So I want to say, I feel like I totally agree with how Maddie would develop that search strategy, but I want to say maybe she actually is searching in the middle, and I think that she searches the edges, which kind of for a variety of reasons are potentially more interesting, maybe your historic hide placement, like Maddie said, but also they often catch odor. So particularly for those volatiles, there might be often more odor trapped in there, even so they're helpful to her for sourcing. But I think she searched the edges, then went across the middle, and then you stayed still. So she stayed where you are. I wonder if you did the same thing and moved through the center of the space, she would have continued to, get the edge, come across, which she kind of started to do when she'd done that initial investigation. She was moving nicely across the space in almost a natural quartering pattern, it looked like to me in the second half of that video, apart from that bit that Sarah picked out where she was like, oh, there's something going on here. So yeah, maybe something to think about. I'd probably, in terms of searching the area, I would probably have in my head like a strategy, whether that, since her line can reach either side of the yard, maybe just walking down the middle is a good strategy, or going around the edge and then walking down the middle. Other people might have different ones that they prefer, but I would probably have in my head a strategy and like execute the strategy no matter what. And the strategy would include like this is my go-to. And then if they don't find it, here's a more systematic, like a tighter pattern that I'm going to do back the opposite direction to try and make sure if it's like stuck underneath something, we still encounter the odor. So that might be worth trying.
So like kind of, have a pattern in mind of my own movements. So if they're not hitting odor right away and being like, it's right here, then I can move through that space and kind of keep moving instead of being stationary.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I kind of like got stuck there and I was like, I could feel it. Like I was like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck here.
I do the same.
That's something that I'm having to work on with Buck right now because we're still doing the spotted lanternfly study, guys. I'm facing a little bit of burnout right now from like my job and kind of like reevaluating like the conservation, like the nose work is the only thing that I'm really truly enjoying, but we kind of got in a rut for a while. My cat's been facing health issues. But we're doing our field eval again. So we took it the first time. The hardest thing for us, I guess, is a time crunch. So we have to search 80 feet by 80 feet in 5 minutes and find 3 to 5 hides, and you can only call one incorrectly. And so our dogs were finding things that was great. They could search up the time crunch, and especially when you're running blind was hard. And he didn't get any during it, but he actually so they used 2 search areas and they set one up and then took a break from that one, collected all the odors, went to another one, did people there, and then came back to the old one later, like with time passing in between, and put odors out. And apparently, even though it had been from a session before, he kept hitting this post. And I like looked at her, I was like, is there one here? And she's like, keep moving on. And I was like, okay. Like he kept hitting it. And she's like, there was one there like 2 sessions ago. So like he didn't find any of the ones that were there, but he hit the exact spot on a post where one was previously. But there was such a large grass area that it was really hard for me to hit that entire field.
So Sarah, I work with spotted lanternfly also. I work for Indiana DNR. Were they asking you to find the spotted lanternfly odor in that amount of time in that big of an area or that size of an area, or were you?
So this is for the study with Virginia Tech and Texas Tech, and so what they do is they have the mesh packets with the eggs in it that they go ahead and set in jars, and they set some at eye level and I think up to 36 inches, 3 feet off the ground, and they set up 3 to 5. So we're going ahead and we're looking for the egg sacs that they had frozen and prepared.
Okay, I'm just curious because I don't know who else has worked with the insect and worked with spotted lanternfly, but I mean it is not a very big odor comb.
It is not. He loves it. Like, and he definitely.
Right. For them to ask to find you in a certain amount of time, to me that doesn't seem like very much time unless you had several hides in that area.
No, it was huge. That was, I think, the hardest thing for every dog that I saw go through, because when you feel under that time restraint in that large amount, you have to be able to like read your dog on a dime, because you cannot you don't have time to sit there and try and figure out if your dog's pulling out. Like they have to be crystal clear with it, and you have to trust that they have passed the area and searched that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's what I was. Okay, thanks. I was just very curious because I was like, wow, that time crunch would be really hard to work with, and especially with this kind of odor and making sure that, did my dog actually find it, or was he finding it, down low and following it to somewhere and not having enough time to get to the source? So that's interesting. Okay. That's with Virginia Tech and who else? Just curious.
It's the Virginia Tech and Texas Tech. So it's through.
Okay.
Sarah, we lost you. You've muted yourself by accident, I think.
I did. I was trying to hold down space. I said this was Sally Dickerson. She's getting her PhD out of Virginia Tech, and she's working with Texas Tech through canine citizen science detection. And they're doing a study, and they've been doing it for about a year. They got grants for it and stuff to see if, essentially the entire study's purpose is to see if like civilian people who do basic level like nose work stuff with their dog, if they could train their dogs and deploy dogs to help, since it's such an invasive species, rather than like taking time to train all of these people who have higher level, I guess, like detection training.
Okay. Yeah. I was curious because I have a lot of friends
And that's
that
their
do the sport of nose work. So for them,
That's where
it
I
helps
started. I
me.
started with
Right.
NACSW. So
Right. And then a lot of them do that and they're like, wow, that's really a weird scent cone. I said, it really is different. I mean, for the dogs to have to work so minutely in an area.
yeah.
So interesting. Thank you.
Sorry, Sarah, is that their like operational test essentially?
Yeah, so they have that, and then they do have an actual like deployment test too, where I think they just take you to an area and see if you find them. So like where we are too in our area, like there's hundreds of spotted lantern flies. Like I'm crushing like 3 to 5 every day. And so we took a couple months break after we like failed our first one. And just recently started getting back to it. And I'm curious, after our first session, like he didn't hit them right away, but then I literally just like let him smell the jar, and then I went and hit it. He's like, oh, I remember the scent. I know what we're doing. And he started looking. And then every time I went to like take him to the bathroom out after, he would just sit there and air scent. I'm like, you're probably just like catching like winds of these like everywhere at this point, which is also hard when it then comes to training. If there's so much of them and it's so prevalent, is how do you isolate that?
Yeah, that's something I've run into, is going into an area where we know it is and you can visually see it and it's everywhere. And it's almost, my dogs are almost confused because they can't just find a single scent and follow it to where it's supposed to go. There's so much. And it's been hard trying to explain that to some of my colleagues that this isn't working for this dog. I need to go on the fringe of, the survey area and work out there and find where you might not have found it yet.
Yep, understood.
Sarah, I don't know exactly how big spotted lanternfly is, but we've been working on finding really small odor, and I have like basically been experimenting with different search patterns to try and see like on my own time to like evaluate whether we're getting like the same sort of levels of detection with different patterns that are more efficient, and I found for our dragon project that that's been really helpful, and so kind of I've ended up with like kind of a weird crisscrossy pattern instead of like the normal one that I might use for other, just like the standard transect system, and that's been the best one, and we're doing like 5 times more area in the same amount of time as a result. So you might want to think about playing around with how you can set your search up in that space to be the like whatever, how far away do you reckon Buck gets the odor? Like on average, give me a range.
On average, I mean, he can usually hit it within a couple feet, but from my like understanding with it, like it's not super volatile at all. Like it has a very small cone that you can detect. So you can probably hit it max 4 or 5 feet would be my guess.
Okay, so the dragons is maybe a little bit bigger, so Evie can get it maybe 2 meters, so that's like something like 6 feet. But sometimes if they're underground, it can be a little less. But it's still, given the area we have to search, which is quite large, it's a similar training challenge. So basically what you want to do is think, how can I move through this space to be within 3 feet of, or whatever distance you want to pick, that's his average detection distance, which will give you a greater than 50% chance or potentially higher. And you can work out like whatever percentage you want to hit, you can work out and use that distance. If you want to get really nerdy, you can make a histogram of detection distance, but I digress. But you got whatever distance you pick, how do I move through this space to be this far away from every place at least once, and ideally twice, so that I'm presenting the odor on different angles. And that might help you with your search strategy too, with that's a very intense certification. I think it's not, in my personal opinion, it's not a good test of whether citizens can be deployed to find invasive species. But maybe the other part of the test, maybe part of it is just trying to get an idea of the relative level of difficulty of different heights, etc. And so they're kind of combining two studies together, and that's why they've designed it.
That's right. I know a couple of people have actually like fully done it with their dog, like got perfect scores, and I was like, that's mad impressive. Good on you.
I also wonder about the quality of samples. I mean, I'm sure this is something that they're trying to control for, but if he's finding the odor of like a sample that's been there 2 sessions ago, but not finding the ones that he's supposed to be finding in that session, I'm wondering like, what's the quality control on some of those things? That's interesting. If in fact that's what he was hitting on is the older odor, or yeah, or the samples that you were given to train on. And that's also interesting that like a citizen science project, like if the citizens are on their own time, I mean, I would say just take your time. But yeah, it would be interesting to see what the outline of that study looks like to see why they're maybe using that approach.
Yeah, I can see if I can gather materials or stuff too and send that over if anyone's interested in looking more into it. So
cool. Well, this was awesome, guys. I don't know if anyone else has anything else, but I've really appreciated this discussion.
This is a question for you, Sarah. Oh, go ahead, Sonia.
Well, I was just going to go back to your video, and I'm trying to do this on my phone, and it keeps putting me on safe driving, so it like won't let me talk or show my image, and I'm like, I'm definitely not driving. I'm sitting on the sofa, but I don't know how to turn that part off. I want to go back to something Megan said to you about going in like before you search, like, having a plan, right, of like how you're going to cover the territory. And I'm sure this has come up in our conversations, in our, the group chats or the trainings or whatever. But I just did a training, a few weeks ago, and there was one lady there who, before she did a search, she like stopped, and before she did an exercise, she stopped and she like verbalized, okay, I'm going to go in from this direction. And, if my dog doesn't get it, then I'm going to do this. And if that doesn't work, then, like she had a very, I thought it was super cool because she verbalized it out loud. So it was easy for me to watch to see like, oh, like what her plan was. And I tried that on my last training with the person that I was training with. I was like, okay, I'm gonna verbalize what my plan is all the way through how excited I'm going to be with the reward, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, there was a big improvement because I didn't go into it, which I usually do, where if he doesn't find it right away, I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? What? And I'm, I get stumped. So anyway, I was just going to say that, yeah, I like what Megan said about that.
Yeah,
that's it.
I'm
done.
Speaking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I've done that speaking to the camera, like in between sessions, like, okay, so this happened, and then if this happens, and it is funny to watch yourself back, but it is like you said, verbalizing it instead of just like, oh, I thought that, and instead of being like, was I thinking that on round 2 or 3 or whatever, but yeah. It's good to make your plan known even to yourself.
That's what we had to do at the seminar. And I think it's not only helpful for everyone to see your plan, but also it holds you accountable so that like if shit goes off the rails, you're like, this is what my next plan is, because it often, or not often, but if you're asked the question of, well, then what? Like you have that plan, or even just there were a couple times people were like, well, what's your plan? And they're like, well, I'm not sure what my dog will do in that case. And it's like, well, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this problem or setting it up, differently for your dog to be successful. Yeah.
Such a good point, Heather. Like even going through that process doesn't just help you, like Sonia said, it also helps you be like, oh, wait, should I be doing this problem?
Yeah, like if I don't know how my dog will react to the chickens by the other side of the fence, maybe let's start at a farther distance before we're with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Or if you do know what your dog would do by the chickens.
Still farther distance then.
Yeah.
Funny enough, during our practice section for the eggs where we had set it up is actually like they have farm animals. And so when we started practicing like on the area, taking time, there was just goats, and our dogs just like looked at them for a second. We're like, there's goats. But surprisingly, they just kept searching. Like none of them got super stuck on it, and it was really nice. So that was happy to see. And then also, if anyone wanted to see it, I dropped the original study. So they started it at like Texas Tech with it, and Nathaniel Hall, who's listed at the top, he's one of the people in it. But that's like the overall, like the whole study, like PDF intro methodology and stuff like that I dropped in chat.
Cool.
Awesome. I'll take a look there. Yeah, so my next coaching call, I'm going to be talking to the camera and saying what my plan is. It's going to look like a TikTok or something, or I'm like vlogging my session, and then but I'll give that a go. That's a great idea. I love all these suggestions.
Cool, guys. Well, I think that might be it for me. But I'm not the host, so I don't know what the host has planned if you're sticking around, Heather, but I think that's it for me for today.
Yeah, I'm open to stay longer if anyone wants to continue talking, but if there's nothing else, we can end a little bit early.
I have another question. No,
Yeah.
don't even need the video. You heading out,
All right,
Maddie?
thanks. Bye, guys. Thank you. It was great today.
Bye.
We'll talk soon.
Bye. So I've encountered for the first time mouthing hides. This is Zuzu. She only does it for the get sent tubes, and she only does it when we're outside and it's kind of taken her a little bit longer to find it, and she's like super excited. And I was trying to think of a way, like I know maybe some folks say like put it in containers where they can't get to it, but then I was trying to move away from having objects to search, like I was talking about, where it's like not always in an object. So I was curious if anyone had any ideas. It's just the get send tubes, and I'm like, no, that's the precious thing. Like you can mouth anything else you want. Yeah, I'm sure this has been a topic before. I just can't remember what some folks' solutions were.
So there's probably a bunch of different ways you can deal with this. Evie, after we did our dragon season, started mouthing hides. And putting them in stuff was one strategy, but also just making sure they're inaccessible, like sticking them between rocks or all the way in the ground or other stuff like that is another one that helped us. And then right now, I really don't want Merlin to touch the disgusting gelatinous gloop that is my dead samples. So, and I also use this for Evie. But basically I create an invisible bubble around my target that's like a laser zone. And if the dog penetrates the invisible laser, then I just mark at that point. And basically it's a mechanism for creating a reinforcement history that has a reinforcer behind the dog at a specific distance. And so I found that with Merlin, he actually eventually has started on when I have the same sample. If I switch out the sample, he hasn't quite generalized it yet, but on the same sample, he'll start to offer at that distance his indication. So I suspect if I just continue, he will get there for the overall target of dead stuff. But Sonia's just laughing at me. Probably about the gelatinous gloop. I can't hear you, Sonia, because you're on mute. But does that help, Anne? I mean, I'm sure there's other ways that Heather might have, or Rachel, or others, but yeah.
Yeah, so you're marking and rewarding before when he's obviously in odor, getting close, but isn't there. And then after that, now he's starting to offer his indication.
Yeah.
Further. So you didn't wait for an indication, really. You were just stopping him short.
It's a click for sniff with an invisible bubble. You're like, you have a set, you could even, if you were, you know, this would create another object cube, but if you wanted, you could put something so to remind you where to click, like a piece of tape or a little leaf or whatever. And you can do it as a speed drill as well. And you don't have to click. You could also cue the indication and do it as like a reinforcement loop, like Anne does, and McGloom. I'd say words this morning. But it's just like you have a specific set distance away that you want her to do the indication to figure out, make sure she's gonna obviously have odor there, and then just click and then reward behind. So you're just kind of like pulling her, you're creating a reinforcement history. That reinforcement happens at this distance from the odor.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
What's the dead goopy stuff?
It's just like decomposed dove, and it's in like peak, it's just turned into like a gloop. It's no longer a bird, it's just a gloop.
Didn't start off as gloop, as I remember.
No, it was like an actual bird, but right now it's just like gelatinous gloop, and I'm like, don't touch the gelatinous gloop.
Do you freeze it?
I have samples in the freezer, but this one I'm just letting it go through the full decomposition cycle as a way of teaching him that all of those phases of the decomposition cycle are part of his target odor. Yeah.
Including the goop phase.
I am struggling with that too. I mean, Drifter's always had a little bit of a problem with fat. He's like, oh, let me just get a quick lick, like a quick lick. And, you know, it's in a jar and there's mesh, but he's still, you know, tries to get in the fastest lick possible before, you know, before he can't. But we just were learning shoreline search, and which he really, really loved. And unfortunately, the first one he got it like right away. He was like swimming like a figure 8, like right over it, like a shark, which is super cool. And they weren't that deep, like, I don't know, maybe 2 feet deep or 3 feet deep or something. And by the third one, he was like bobbing for apples. Like he was shoving his whole head under and grabbing it and pulling it up in his mouth, and like, what, you know, I was like, drop. And he just wasn't listening to me. He was trying to carry it to shore. Yeah. And so I suppose if I start training again, I've been thinking about that, like, what do I do? And I'm like, I guess I get something very heavy and weight it down with rocks. So he can't possibly, like, no matter how much he bobs for it, he can't pull it up. Yeah. But I'm open to suggestions. And I think he got more excited because it was in water, and that, you know, that was more fun, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the bobbing because, yeah, I don't know. Any ideas?
I feel like that could be reinforcing in and of itself for certain dogs, but usually when I have issues with like interaction with our target, I'd try to do what Meg said and either like click for sniff, like just really lowering my criteria of not needing like an alert or anything. Let's just take a step back before you even have a chance to like lick or paw at it, or because
Shove your
I'm
head
curious.
underwater.
Yeah. I'm curious, Anne, you said it usually it's the get scent tubes, but then it's also, is it just because it's a longer search that it's taken her longer to find, so she's like jazzed up, or does it happen for shorter ones too? It's just get scent in general.
I think it's both.
Both.
I think she has had longer searches with them because I've just been doing them outside. And so like, it takes me a little more time to get her focused and in. So just the act of her focusing outside kind of gets her riled a bit. But I think she did also do that at first when I was doing the get scent tubes inside, like not as much. The last time I thought she had swallowed it, but she hadn't, but she had just picked it up and flung it so far. Yeah, she's like, I'm so sorry. She picked it up and flung it so far away that I was like, oh no, she's eating it. And then I found it like a few feet away. And it started off like the first time with this, just a little lick. So I think it is just the get scent, but
I know you're trying to move away from visual, but I feel like if you're adding the outside element as something new, having it contained in something like a glass jar with a mesh or something, or a suet container so that they can't physically interact with it. And then you can always, once you have enough reinforcement built around it, kind of phase out the visual. I would maybe start that way. And even just doing, if you could, like, I know we always think it's easy and then it ends up being like harder than we anticipate, but like starting with something easy so that you can get a quick like click reward so that she's like, oh, I get my reward or whatever. Yeah, I always usually like lower my criteria whenever I'm adding something new to try.
Yeah. I think now that I'm recognizing it's a pattern, and now it's saying it out loud again, like we're saying, like now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, yeah, it was kind of obvious she was doing that, like as you're asking me the questions, but as it was happening, I don't think I put that all together until you asked me, and I kind of had to think about it and say it out loud. So that's really helpful too. Yeah, I could put it in a tin or put it in something, for right now, so she doesn't have the habit. Yeah. Just thinking that, just lost in thought here.
Sonia, yeah, I'm so not well versed in underwater stuff. So I think your idea of something weighted down that he can't physically get to would probably be a good option.
Yeah. Well, we've just started, but yeah, the first one I was like, oh my God, it's so cool. Like he gets it. And then by the third one, I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. He's trying to like retrieve it and bring it on shore and he's squishing it in his mouth. Like this is not good.
He's a good gun dog. Bringing it back to you. But I really need to see Shark Drifter. I really hope that you videoed it. I really want to see him being like a shark.
I'll try to find something.
We need more videos from you, Sonia.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts, I feel like there's probably a lot of ways to like parse this out, but one of my thoughts was working on if you had like a lineup, but you had like buckets of water as the lineup so that like I guess I'm thinking of like the big picture is like alert, or I don't know, alerting. I don't know if you have like a water alert, but alerting to a find that's in water. And so then kind of like I feel like my next step down would be like shallow water that he's not like swimming. And then maybe another step down from that might be
like a kiddie pool, like
Yeah,
bucket,
like
and then you can do like a larger like kiddie
Yeah.
pool area. Where he doesn't pick
Yeah,
it up.
I did try with buckets, and that was very tempting because he could look right in and see it.
He just wants to
Um,
stick his head in.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know if I let him, if he would pull it out and drop it and then indicate on it. Like maybe he thinks like, oh, I need to
Yeah, potentially.
make it accessible. I don't know. Or if it was, like
Did you
he
cover the
he like-
bucket with
I
a
did not
line?
cover the
like,
bucket.
screen
And that's one
over
of the
it or-
things, yeah, I'm learning, like we were talking about when the training goes bad is when you usually learn something. And I did buy some like some things that to put source in, like a chum bucket that I can put rocks in the bottom and like weight it down. Yeah, so we'll see. But he does have a real tendency to want to pick it up and like pull it out of the water. So
Not knowing him, I guess my brain going to like the worst thing possible would be like if there's something weighted underwater and he's trying really hard to get it, if he would like try too hard and scare himself from staying under too long, or I don't know.
I don't think so. I think, yeah, I don't think so. I think, he was, I think I just need to make it so he can't get it. Like I said, with the training that I went to this HR clinic and it was really, really hot. And then we did shoreline the last thing when it was super hot. And I think he was so excited to be in the water. And then the first one, he found it and I prompted him to, right by shore to bark at me, and he did, and he got a lot of excitement. And so I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe by the third one, he was just like doing his own game, which was like, I'm just going to go find it. And I'm going to, because he kept bobbing and then he was pawing to try to get it to come up. And it was down on the bottom, but it wasn't weighted down. So it was pretty easy for him to get the water all disturbed and then, find it. And yeah. And then at that point, he was just ignoring me. He was just like chomping on it and all happy with himself, and it was not good.
That's what I was thinking too, Heather, like doing TADs. Like maybe you could do a lineup with TADs. Yeah. I don't know.
It sounds like an inaccessible issue to
It's like
me a little bit
frustration.
as well. Which so a lot of people think about targets as being the same when you want your indication to basically be nose on source, which is essentially what you have Drifter do the rest of the time, as well as when we want the indication to be in a different place. So sometimes when they can't get their nose on source, then that creates what we see as these destructive or frustration.
You're so good. You're so smart, Megan. You're very knowledgeable. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Mostly
like
through failure.
That totally makes sense that he's like, I can't get my nose on it, so I'm going to get it up, on shore. So yeah.
So
that
I
makes
feel
sense.
like if you work on a distance alert or variable distance alerts or that same click for sniff, or what's your alert meant to be for this? Is it your find refine eventually, or?
We just like days before that added in a bark alert because I don't think you were on the last call. I think this might have come up, but I realized when there's hides in the bushes or where I can't fully see him, I can't tell if he's indicating, if he's alerting, or if he's looking or what he's doing. And he likes to bark, so he caught on really quickly. So yeah, so what I've been doing now is when he finds it, he automatically does nose on source, but then kind of like keeps glancing back to me, and I prompt a bark, or a lot of times he just remembers the bark, and we've started to add in the find refine. So, it's I would say it's 75% good. Like sometimes he finds it and then I kind of either tell him return or I lean forward and open my arms and he runs to me and then he looks at me and then I'm like, speak. And then he barks. He's like, he, still needs a little prompting along the way. And then, he takes me back to it. But if I'm close by, yeah, he usually just barks. And that's what I'm rambling.
So I
That's
would
what I
just
do with
prompt
the
your
water.
sequence. Like, think of your pick somewhere. Maybe your invisible bubble is underwater. But somewhere when you know he's got it, then you can start prompt your sequence, like the same way as, if it was on land, or the same way if you were doing nose work and teaching an inaccessible alert, you're going to teach them that it's okay to alert not right at source in certain situations. Like find the closest place that isn't
Right.
underwater, or that doesn't require you to destroy the box or the furniture, or use your awesome problem-solving skills to open handles, depending on what the rules of the game are, so that he understands like where in the sequence he's supposed to come and tell you, because I think he's trying to get his nose on sauce.
Do you think also, we were
Interesting.
just talking, who's it, Madison, where she said she hypes her dog up with barking to get him to search because it kind of pumps him up more? Do you think that, you said he likes barking, do you think the combination of hyping up with the barking plus the frustration of not being able to get nose at source might be a lot?
Too much? No, I think it's just like with his ball, he likes to drop it in the snow and then look for it, or get the ball, like if he's chasing in the water, like half full of water, so it kind of sinks, and let it drop and then like look for it and grab it. So I think it's just the fun of trying to grab something that's in the water. That's what I think. Yeah, because he doesn't sometimes he goes into a search with a lot of enthusiasm, but a lot of times he goes into a search like, I'm like, does he even like this? Because he doesn't go into it like, really intense. He kind of goes into it like, okay, yeah. But yeah, I think with that one, it was just, yeah. I think what Megan said, it was like inaccessible, and we work a lot on, even when he does find refind, I still prompt him to like put his nose right on it. So that's something to think about. I think that combined with the excitement of the water. No, I actually made a note of what Madison said about her getting Bruce pumped up. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should try that.
I have an intense dog. He needs no hyping up. I tell him to find it. I have a German Shepherd who was just like, oh my God, this is what we're doing. And like, when we started getting back into it was actually kind of like exciting, because I took it back a step and just started like inside again, just like really like lowered back to like baseline 1 when we went back up, and I just like hear his nostrils just like taking in all of the air because he was so excited. Like he's just so audible about it, and like when he would hit certain areas, like he was a really fun dog. Like he's 8, so like we're not really going like super far. Like this is gonna be like his life goal, but it's really fun for him. And he was a really fun dog to first start learning nose work on, because he is so obvious. Like he takes in everything and is excited to do it, that it was just great.
And even in the heat, is he still have like that same like super drive when it's super hot?
For a while, yes, he does slow down eventually with it. But in the beginning, like and once again, so we're working on like a 5-minute timer, it's not as big of a deal right now because he's not going for super long periods of time. And since I don't think I would ever since with his age currently, I don't think I would ever push him to go long periods of time, since once again, he doesn't have a whole history in the background. There's no really point in me starting him hardcore on that now. But he still does go very hard in the beginning. Like when I take him out, like he is just excited to search. Like that is also just part of the reward. I can use a food reward with him. I've actually never used a toy reward because I started off in NACSW with like oils where they essentially want you to use food or they start teaching with food, and it is a big enough reward with the search that he loves it.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about the dog in front of you in terms of if you need to hype them up in terms of arousal or lower them down to get that optimal search state. And yeah, I kind of have both ends of the spectrum too, but
I do have some TADs. I just haven't imprinted them with anything, which it's on my list to do. I'm just not sure what odors I should do. Like what would be the most useful and how to do it. I'm going to have to call them or look it up or something because you have to be really careful, right? Oh, am I talking to myself?
Nope, we got you.
Oh,
Yeah, I haven't used them, but based on talking to people who have, it's not like I don't think it'll be a problem for dead stuff, Sonia. Like I think if you have really, really, really low volatility stuff, you just have to be really careful to make sure it's like close. But I think if you just follow the instructions, it should be, which are on their page, or come with the TADs, it shouldn't be too tricky.
okay.
I have not personally used them yet either. I know we have some as an order, but I have not been the one to implement.
Yeah, I haven't used them either, but I was pleasantly surprised with the Get Sent tubes, like when I did that it wasn't I had to think about how I was doing it ahead of time and like lay it, like kind of have it laid out. So I had my plan, but then actually doing it wasn't bad. I just had to like read ahead of time and have a plan and then like do it in a day when I had some time to, like I wouldn't be rushing through it and stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say it out loud before I do it. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to impregnate my TADs. Bye, Megan.
Any other lingering questions? We had a really good discussion.
Yeah, I picked up some good stuff this time. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for brainstorming, everyone. I got some good things to try now.
Yeah, let
I
us know.
have
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
one thought, Anne, and I may be completely off, but you know, you were standing pretty close to you know, when Zuzu was like going more around the perimeter and you were standing closer to where the hide was. And when I was watching it, I was like, I wonder if she thinks, well, it's never right here next to you. So she was thinking it must be out here because she would never put the hide like right next to her body. So I wondered if that like just where your body was prompting her to search, you know, further away from you.
Yeah, or blocking her from going that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll need to pay attention to keep moving with her. I think my tendency has been to kind of be still just because I'm trying to have her be a little more methodical.
Like ground her.
Yeah, but like maybe I've kind of gone too far in that sense, like to keep moving while we're searching.
I think it's one thing if you're still when she's off leash kind of searching, but if you're on leash and tethered, you can kind of like direct her to be a little bit like she can still be going back and forth on the back, yeah, on her end of the leash, but yeah, just try and make sure you're, like we said, like you're gonna do too, but like having, yeah, some sort of search plan ahead of time. And what they talked about in the seminar was especially working on like pooling odor. I really think you were dealing with like the odor was not available. And we had one too
Yeah.
where they, like second to last day, they're like, okay, we're going to end on something really easy. And like Scotty and I cleared the area twice. And then I was just like, all right, good boy. And they're like, oh, you're calling it? And I'm like, yeah, we checked it twice. I don't want to like keep asking him. And so then we brought out Ellie, who then confirmed she also walked it and was like, there's nothing here. So I think it was an odor availability problem, but they say if your dog kind of goes through an area twice, kind of help them out, pull them out and go in the other direction to make sure that they could hit it in the other direction. But after that, then it either was too hard, not acting the way that you thought it was going to act, or, you know, not available. And so, yeah, I think
Right.
overall, yeah, you did a great job. And like, it was a little long the first time, I think, with the 4-minute video, given the search area size, but I think we also want our dogs to be successful and end on that. So it's like hard to call it, but I think you did a good job in like giving the praise and kind of, yeah, but I think also, yeah, like Madison said, like having some sort of end search procedure is helpful too. And being able to, like, I think you said you have an all done queue. So the dog knowing that we're all done and you can end, like I end with toy with Ellie because food is her main reinforcer. So we get to play a little bit of tug. So it really depends on what your dog would find reinforcing. For like Scotty, whose main thing is ball, like I don't give him the ball for blank or blank fines, but he can do like a little bit of tug or even food. So I just try to save the top tier rewards for their fines. But to each their own on that one too. I've seen people reward the search with the thing too.
Yeah. I probably won't do a lot of setting her up in that way to go keep her confidence going, but I think but like we're saying with the pattern, it would be good for me to have a plan going into it. Like, okay, if she doesn't find anything, you know, and at a certain amount of time, I'll call it and I'll do this, and kind of having that in mind ahead of time. Because for this, I was like, I don't know what to do now, you know. Like, good girl, like, because it seemed like she was searching.
Right. I think it
yeah.
was clearly the odor. I think you should set it up again with something stronger, or let it sit out less or whatever, and just in the same place and do it again. And like, so, and then have a comparison for us.
Yeah. And a plan. Yeah, that sounds good. That all sounds really helpful.
Yeah, because both dogs didn't get it. So
yeah,
I don't think it was the dogs.
That is the nice thing of having two
yeah
kind of problem. Like when both of them don't get it, I'm like, okay, there's something
right.
going on. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having video, as we all learn from it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always like the day before the call. Like, I need to get some video.
Hey, if it's the incentive we need sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't mind it.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for a good conversation, and look forward to next month.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.